1, 2, 3, 4. My name is Scribe, and I live on a small ranch in the arid hills of a place that I call home, which is just outside of another and much larger place that used to be called Los Angeles, which these days, you know what? I could regale you with tales of my morning coffee, chores around the ranch, and my weekly diagnostical escapades, but we'll be keeping this short because you might remember there being an ongoing emergency concerning a beacon, a bunker, and the people that are trapped inside. The short version is that I run shop mending machines and gadgets out of a little place called Junkyard Gulch. My day-to-day work has included everything from RC cars to, and this happened recently, 100 tons of out-of-control excavator with an entirely unnerving machine spider nightmare thing doing who can say for, as of now, unknown reasons. At this point, I'm thinking that you're asking, Scribe, can you get to the point already? There's a family in a bunker and they are running out of air, so hold your horsepower. Coming up next, Chapter 3, Witness Marks. If you were to pace the pavement between the western tangle and downtown, in what used to be mile after mile of homes and strip malls and warehouses, you might find yourself tripping on a curb. If you do, give a look, because you might be tripping over a piece of history, concrete that did not grow but was poured by human hands. If you're really lucky, you might find something special, the impression of a hand, or maybe even a name, a message from another time set into stone. Something that will almost certainly outlive us all. Last we left off, I had just received a mayday from Ricky over at the farmhouse. Now see, he had been talking to someone named Dave over the radio, and Dave was trapped in some kind of sealed bunker with his sister and his mother. That bunker is running out of power and, by extension, air. So, in order to find out where that bunker actually is under all that ever-growing asphalt in the valley, we needed to triangulate the signal coming from the bunker's emergency beacon. Now, we can do that by using 2 directional antennae, each pointed in the direction that they are hearing that emergency beacon. Now, one of those is on top of the farmhouse connected to Ricky's radio. The other antenna was hopefully on the roof of a nearby settlement known to locals as the mall. So, with a compass reading from the farmhouse and a compass reading from the mall, we should be able to figure out exactly what direction and exactly what distance I needed to drive for me to be sitting right on top of that bunker, give or take. So, Jesper and I are, in this moment, flooring it through the long flat from one side of the valley to the other, trying to get to the mall and then to the bunker before it was all too late. You know, I will never stop being fascinated by how some people have managed to adapt to our little apocalypse here. Some of us, like Ludley, survived by keeping it all at a distance. I found my solace in learning and helping as much as I could. And some people have no barrier at all between their lives and the machines that are living in them. The mall? Well, the mall is one of those places. It's an entire functioning settlement in what is essentially a zoo for every single gadget, gizmo, or tool that you can think of. I am no stranger to living in close proximity with what I feel compelled to remind you are essentially wild animals of various sizes, demeanors, and eating habits. And despite a lot of my concerns, the mall folk, well, they seem to have no trouble at all. They turn up a good business and trade and have a habit of opening their doors to strangers who need a roof or a meal. No complaints here. Having said that, I don't like going there. It gives me the heebie-jeebies. The last time I dropped by, they were having some trouble with their HVAC, which I helped to rectify, and it turns out that it was movie night. And never having seen one, I said, oh sure, why not? This movie was about a bunch of dead bodies walking around in a mall, eating the people who tried to take shelter in that mall. The scariest 2 hours of my life. And they watched this for fun. I had to drive back in the dark, half expecting one of those things to pop out of Jesper's back seat and start chewing on my skull. Nothing did, but I still checked. That was years back, and I've returned a few times since for some spare electronics and other odds and ends, but I have not set foot inside since movie night. Today, I was not rolling up with a plan. It was just me, Jesper, Ricky on the airwaves, and 3 little rubber ducks. I have not met any of the mall folk that I did not like, which is pretty impressive considering humanity's overall record in that area. The thing to remember is that they have a transactional and trade-based social dynamic. Or maybe culture is more appropriate? At what point does one turn into the other? Anyways, when I went to movie night, that was part of how they paid me for helping to fix their air conditioning. Now, I did not have much except my services to trade for what I needed, even if that was just access to their roof for half an hour. Unless they needed one of those mercifully quick fixes like their golf cart through a drive belt or I just had to flip a breaker, chances are it would take longer than we could afford. My first negotiation was with the mall folks' current ship rep, who hopped off the loading dock and greeted me with a loud, "Yo!" So I gave them a howdy back, I introduced myself as Scribe, they introduced theirself as Sketch. I explained my situation, that I wanted to get on the roof and use one of the mall's radio antenna. Now, they gave me a few hems and haws in return about how they'd be bothering the management, and then they saw something unexpected. Oh, tight. Is that a rubber duck? I had given momentary thought on using the ducks to trade, but I figured if they had anything in this mall at all, it was a rubber duck. Apparently not. We shook hands. They said receipt, as all mall folk do after they make a deal, and with 2 remaining rubber ducks and a handheld radio, I was headed straight for the Council of Management, which apparently meets in the court, which is, well, the food court. Now, it turns out that the council is made up of representatives from every different faction of mall folk. Security was easy to spot with the badge and the uniform. There was a man with an apron and a beard net who I figured worked for one of the eateries surrounding us, and there was a handful of others sporting shiny sneakers, spectacularly elaborate nails, and all manner of ceremonial, and in some cases living, accessories. I did my best to keep my brief short, but at this point, I think you all know me well enough to know that I did not succeed. What I should have said was, "There's a signal coming from an underground bunker somewhere in the valley and the bunker is running out of air. We need the directional radio antenna on your roof to find out exactly where it is to go and save the people inside." What I actually said was... Well, I don't fully remember what I actually said. Sometimes when I'm asked to do public speaking, I black out and then wake up 10 minutes later talking about something else entirely. I'm pretty certain I was part of the way through trying to explain who really invented the radio when someone finally said, "Ah, you need access card." Thank you, stranger. Everyone was nodding as if they had said something important. I was not in a familiar situation, which is not by any means a rare moment in my life, but I do have to admit that when a lot of people nod in agreement, I find myself nodding with them without thinking about whether I, know what they're doing all that nodding about. Then the security guard leaned forward and said, "OSHA 1910, roof access only for the authorized," which I think meant something serious by his tone of voice, and I thought I was out of luck until the fry cook stood up and said, "I authorize on behalf of the food court," and he nodded at me. I think I recognized him from when I was fixing their air conditioning. Not at first, as he was not fully drenched in sweat. Then, a wiry woman of distinguished age pushed herself out of her chair and said, "I authorize. This one sat through Romero." I definitely remembered her, and how she was busting herself up laughing, watching me watch that movie. After a moment, the security guard said, "So what, we give things away for free now?" Which stopped them all. So, I took my moment and said, "Tell you what, one house call, whatever you need, whenever you need it." And I saw the guard about to object. They didn't seem like the delayed gratification type, so I pulled out my ace. And in the meantime, I did happen to find this perfect little rubber duck. So I was on my way now with one little rubber duck and a near simultaneous receipt from the Council of Management. Not long after that, Sketch was leading me through the back corridors of the mall to a small ladder and finally to a hatch that opened onto the roof. We were close enough to the hills to still see them in the smog, but everything beyond that was just shades of haze. All I had to do when I was up there was find a directional antenna among the many choices, plug it right into my handheld receiver, and start churning the array. I make my choice, a dish on the southern edge of the antenna cluster. I listen for the beacon, churn the dish slowly and slowly until it's dialed just right, and then I take my compass reading, 103. Now, Ricky's array was pointed at a hair over 63 degrees, and the array on the mall was pointed at 103, and that puts the beacon that they were both hearing somewhere south of us. But in order to actually triangulate where that signal was in relation to us, I needed one more vital piece of information. what is the distance between my receiver and Ricky's? Had I thought ahead a bit, I may have spent a little more effort trying to figure out how to measure the distance between Ricky and I, being an essential step in this rescue operation. Then I had one of those back-of-the-brain tickles that you get when you know there's an answer to the question that you've been asking, but you just can't remember where. There are times in my life that I feel like I have so much useless and esoteric knowledge living in the space between my gray matter that the important things that keep me safe, fed, warm, and out of trouble are the hardest things to reach for in the moments that I most need them. I was starting to panic. I was racking every memory of every technical manual that I have ever managed to find and read. But for some reason, my mind kept going back to Ludley. I don't want to make it seem like I'm making fun of the man. The world changed overnight, and I don't blame him for wanting nothing to do with what it changed into. I am, however, in awe of the lengths that he has gone to just to make that happen. Every meal that he has cooked in the last however long it's been has been cooked with sun or with wood. We met him our first month of squatting at the ranch, waiting for the dust to settle, and he was scavenging for chrome or foil for a solar oven. He got spooked by V. Now, V was my first living vehicle out of the chaos. A big, lumbering Humvee and the grandsire to Jesper. V's frame is up on blocks under his favorite oak tree on the hill. Hilda, Tin, and I, the original three, were all just agaw at this salt and pepper lumberjack cowering beside the junkyard fence being approached by an overly friendly off-road vehicle with no concern for concepts like personal space. We come to learn he built this cabin up past the orchard, and had been living there since the Protomation, eating through a lifetime supply of dried goods, foraged greens, and trapped game. Meanwhile, we were rationing ramen packets and trying to remember the early symptoms of scurvy. Who keeps that kind of information on hand? Not the three idiots who also didn't realize that some of those trees up on that hill were oranges and lemons. But Ludley remembered that sort of thing. So, we drink lemonade every week. We snack on smoked grouse, we look out for him, he looks out for us. And every once in a while, he has the answer to questions that we didn't even know that we could ask. Which is the moment that I finally remembered. I rang the ranch. Ricky, I need you to find Ludley and say these exact words to him. Ludley, you were absolutely right. Sextants are very interesting, and I'm sorry that I happened to take a nap in the middle of our conversation. By any chance, did you happen to write down the coordinates that you got from the ranch house porch? I don't think he got all of that, but the gist was enough, and time was getting shorter by the second. The real question was, hey, Sketch? Sup? Is there any possibility that the paper plans to this place are stored somewhere? Security office. Great. I need 2 really specific numbers written somewhere on those plans. They're going to be right next to each other, and it'll look a little like this. I pulled a piece of chalk from my pocket, and I showed him how it would look. Numbers and degrees, more numbers and an apostrophe, some numbers, a decimal point, even more numbers than 2 apostrophes. Confused yet? Because I was starting to worry that I would reach the level of out of my depth where the depths started staring back. Now, I have to say, I liked Sketch. They didn't ask questions, they just looked, memorized, nodded, and said, exact numbers, got it, and took off at a run. Me? Well, I had to run all the way back down to the loading dock, get a binder out of Jesper's glove box, the one I forgot, and then run all the way back up here and find a very specific and very fiddly bit of math in the tables in the back. Math and I have not often gotten along. What Hilda does in her head with all those thousandths of inches and micros of meters, well, that takes me a lot of scribbling and double-checking, and if we're being completely honest and vulnerable here, some amount of swearing. What I did not realize in my younger days was that you didn't have to do the math in your head to be able to use an equation. You just needed to know what to plug in where. So, I was feeling optimistic. In the back reference tables of a laminated ring-bound field survival guide, the one that I found in the desk in a ranch house that is now our home, is a little equation named the equirectangular approximation. In short order, both Sketch and Ricky got back to me with their numbers, which came in degrees, minutes, and seconds, each a subdivision of our latitude and our longitude. You with me? Then, All I had to do was take the average radius of the Earth, near about 3,958.756 miles, according to the binder, then multiply that by the square root of the difference in longitude between us and the ranch house, times the cosine of the latitude of the ranch house plus the latitude of right here at the mall, divided by 2, squared, plus the difference in latitude of our points A and B, also squared. You still with me? Well, you are if you got lost somewhere around degrees, minutes, and seconds. I must have gone through it 5 times, and somehow I had 6 different answers. Nothing was, in the most literal possible sense, adding up. And then I hear, oh yeah, I think it's about 5 miles, 5.22? Sketch, who had been looking over my shoulder the entire time, with what I now imagine was an expression of amused pity, had just done in their head what I could not on paper. So much for plugging numbers into an equation. I must have been staring at them like they had grown a second head because they just said, "What?" And I motioned them to continue, and they did. I think you were getting caught up on the trig tables. Check this. If this is our triangle, and that's the bearing of the baseline, all you need to do is go 5.1 miles from the loading dock at a bearing of 101. I swear to you, in that moment, I almost gave Sketch my last rubber duck. Not a few minutes later, I was in Jesper, I zeroed her odometer, and I floored it. One eye was on my compass, trying to keep the bearing, and the other was watching the miles tick up. The sun was already getting low and the shadows long. I did not have time to move quietly, so I crossed those 5.1 miles in 6th gear. The moment I saw the odometer roll over to the magic number, I slammed on the brakes and hopped out. Everything was painted in that kind of sunset that only heavy pollution could provide. Dull red and orange, a gradient all the way to the horizon. I looked around for any kind of landmark, hoping against hope for a metal hatch set into the concrete, next to a giant sign saying Doomsday Bunker here. I was absolutely lost until the lantern palms flickered on for the night. I was standing in the middle of a circle of them, a cul-de-sac. I used to live in one. With the proper orientation, I could now see where the driveways were, the flattened foundation of a few houses, and as I was scanning the grounds nearby, looking for a raised patch of concrete or sheet metal, I tripped on a curb. I looked down, and I saw a handprint in the concrete, with a name written neatly underneath, Suzanne. Next to it, a smaller handprint with Lizzie written out in a child's writing, shaky and with little concern as to which letters should or should not be capitalized. Next to that was a paw print, with the name Dave written under it. I went back to Jesper and I radioed Ricky. "Ricky? Who were you talking to last night? What was their name?" And he told me. "It's Dave. Did you find them?" But I didn't answer. I only asked, "And Dave is talking to you?" "Not directly." So I asked him what he meant by not directly, and he told me. "Well, it's actually kind of brilliant. Now, they don't have a microphone down there, so Dave is doing text-to-speech on the computer and porting it directly out of the high-gain transmitter of their emergency beacon." 2 handprints and a paw print. I told Ricky to hang tight, and I walked an imaginary path up where their driveway may have been, over the foundation of their house, and into their backyard. Not far from me, in the back corner, was a pile of freshly broken concrete. I rushed over, I swept it away, and I pulled open the metal hatch, and I saw a pressure door. I spun and spun until I could hear the latch catch. I pulled and struggled against the pressure until it finally opened, and it smelled like dust and potpourri down there. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I could see the faintest flicker of light from somewhere further in. This was the second time that day I had been faced with poorly lit danger, so I hefted my heaviest flashlight once more, and I tried to get a better look. It was a time capsule. The walls were wood panel, the carpet was shag. There were actual magazines stacked on a table and bunk beds in the corner, neatly made. For the second time that day, I said hello to the darkness, not knowing if it would be worse to hear an answer back or not. No answer. No sign of Suzanne, or of Lizzie, or even Dave. The room had but the one corner, a right angle to an alcove I could not see, and of course, that was where the light was flickering out from. I rounded it, expecting the absolute worst, but I found a computer that had started growing into the wall behind it, partially engulfing their radio. There were fragments of images flashing on the screen, and as I got closer, I saw they were all pictures and videos of a mother and a daughter and their dog, a floppy golden lab. It was all days at the park, school photos, and birthday parties. The whole history of a family with now only a computer to remember it. A computer that had no other frame of reference for its place in the world than as that family's dog.
Help us. Help.
As soon as I was sure that I wasn't going to pass out from shock, I said the first thing that came to my mind. Dave? Can you hear me?
Power. Low. 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 Low.
What happened to Suzanne? Lizzie?
Family. Right here. They are all here. With me.
No, there's no one here.
I see them.
I don't know why I was trying to convince this poor thing that it wasn't real. Because from Dave's perspective, he was. I was at a loss for what to say, so I just went with, everything's gonna be okay, Dave. They're here, with you. They're here.
They're here.
The image on his screen settled onto one of Dave the dog, sleeping, and Lizzie, who was also sleeping, on Dave the dog. Happy thoughts. At that moment, a question popped into my head. Dave, what's the first thing that you remember that was down here in this bunker?
A sound.
And before I could finish saying, what sound, he played it. What are the odds of hearing that a second time down here?
Are you going to help us?
Yes. I am. We're all safe now, all right?
They love me.
And then the screen flickered black. The last lights on the radio faded, and the bunker was quiet. I decided to leave Dave where he was. It seemed like the right place for him to be at rest. Twilight was fading fast, which means I wanted to be pointing myself in the direction of home. I radioed Ricky to say I'd be back soon, that I couldn't explain over the radio, and that it wasn't really bad news, but it wasn't good news either. I spent the drive back thinking of how to break it to him. We found Ricky about 5 or 6 years back, wandering the road on his lonesome. He didn't quite have the hang of words yet, but his name was written on the inside label of the jacket that he was wearing, Ricardo Rios. I really wish that I could tell you that the alliterative nature of his name was not a deciding factor in taking him with us. Well, hey, it's not like we were going to leave him there. I'm just saying, there was barely a moment between when we realized he had no one and when we decided he now did. We took him back up to Junkyard Gulch, not necessarily the place for a child, but he seemed happy enough to follow us around while we worked. Took to words pretty quickly, and I think Ricky is the only reason Ludley started coming down from his cabin. They get along all right in the kitchen, and Ludley has started needing some help around the house. Somewhere along the line, Hilda had Ricky help take apart a radio, and that was that. That radio is his link to the world, and all the other people in it. I think he knows the name of every operator between here and the SGV, and without him, we wouldn't have had a fraction of the work that's come our way. Without him, in many ways, we'd be that much lonelier. Sometimes I envy Ricky and Hannah for growing up in this world and not having had their world drop out from under them. Okay, not as much Hannah. She is only ever happy when she's riding a dirt bike, and I swear to you, I have never seen her frown. But Ricky? Well, I think he really needed to save someone. I am not naive enough to think that the grass is any greener in their situation, but they never had anything to compare it to. All of this, the danger, the insanity, the straight-up weirdness of the world that we live in, for them, that's just Tuesday. They might be stronger for it, but I don't know. Later that night, I ended up driving Ricky up to the top of the ridge. I thought he should take a break, look at the stars, spot a few satellites, get another perspective on the world. I told him what I found down there, how he had been spending his nights talking to a computer that thought it was alive and, well, hell, in a lot of ways was. I think he took it better than I did. After a long time silent, he thanked me for giving Dave some comfort at the end. He said I didn't have to. I said I did. Then, as timing is my specialty, I pulled out my last rubber duck. Here, I found this. He had never seen one before. He just laughed at the absurdity of it and asked me what it was used for. And not having a better answer, I just said, well, it floats on water. We hung out there a few more hours. It was far enough from the city that you got a good view of a patch of stars hanging out over the ocean. The last thing he asked me before he fell asleep was, are satellites alive? Ricky, I have not an earthly clue. Not long after that, I started driving us back home. Jesper tried her best not to wake the young man. She just gently drove to the barn and opened my door, not his. I threw a blanket over him, and I found the two of them in the same place that morning. Now, usually Jesper was already doing her zoomies, but the little man was snoring. I couldn't blame her. I spent that morning's chores trying to wrap my head around Dave. Put a computer in a sealed bunker, a hard drive full of pictures and home videos. How long was it there before it was alive? Did it take decades to finally grow into the radio, slowly reaching beyond the walls of the bunker? I could almost believe that, except for one thing. Something had dug up the hatch covering the pressure door, breaking through an inch of concrete, but I don't think it actually opened the bunker. Now, I'm saying something and it here, but I think we all know what it is that I am talking about, right? The first thing Dave remembered was the sound that spider made. Did Dave hear it through the pressure door, or is what we hear just part of a more complex signal? Top that off with a dash of, what could it want with the biggest excavator I have ever seen, and a sprinkle of, why did it care about an outdated computer gathering dust in a bunker? I needed to track this thing down, and I couldn't do that without help, which means now I have to do the really scary thing. Try to convince everyone here at the ranch that there is a living machine spider somewhere out there in the dust bringing the light of creation to anything that managed to miss it in the first go-round. If I could find one tangible shred of evidence that this thing existed, aside from a glimpse in the dust and the dying dreams of a computer, I think I would feel a little less insane. And you know what? That ain't nothing. You have been listening to All Machines, Chapter 3, Witness Marks, written, composed, and performed by yours truly, Kevin Walker Burnett. This project has been released under a Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike 4.0 international license. All Machines is an independent and fictional media project. Any similarities to existing people or technology is accidental, as long as it's not satire. Sound files were found on freesound.org, and a full list of contributors can be found in the description. For those of you who have not met me or needed my services, I have a media production business in Los Angeles, California. My advice is, in fact, free, and my rates are indeed negotiable. If you need it developed, produced, or finished, I might be able to help or find you someone who can. And if you find yourself emotionally invested in what you're listening to, you can let me know in the reviews or the comments, wherever they may be found. All machines will return for Chapter 4. Until then, thank you for listening.